An ordinary salaryman dies one day and is reborn as Ars Luvent, the son of a noble. Although he isn't talented in magic or swordplay, he does have one skill that no one else possesses: appraisal. Using this ability, Ars can determine a person's current strength, how much potential they hold, and where their talents rest. This skill is especially useful in the present situation of the country. The government is corrupt, revolts occur more often than not, and nobles far and wide are strengthening their fortifications in preparation for an all-out war. With this in mind, Ars realizes he too must prepare by gathering talented people: a persecuted foreigner unparalleled with the sword, a slave with an unknown talent for magic, and a timid boy with an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. Such talents lend Ars their support as he aims to create the most powerful territory. There is a continent in the fantasy world that is known as Summerforth. This continent has 7 kingdoms in it. The 7 kingdoms are Rofael, Ansel, Paradil, Conshiep, Schutz, Sites, and Mission. Over time, the kingdom of Ansel absorbed the rest of the kingdoms and changed the name to the Summerforth Empire. This is the year 212 of the Summerforth calendar, and a noble family, House Louvain, is seen burying the head of the family who just passed away. One of the man's sons, Ars, walks toward the burning fire and sheds tears. He then turns to everyone watching, letting them know that he is now the head of the family. To know who Ars is, the scene goes back a few. A young working man in Japan leaves his room on his way to work and suffers a cardiac arrest, sending him to his early grave. He wakes up to see a woman talking to him. It seems he is in a hospital, and the person standing in front of him is a nurse. He is more startled when he realizes that there is a flying dog in the room. When a reflective pan is placed in front of him, he realizes that he is now a baby and seems to be in another world. It turns out that Ars was reincarnated and born in a village called Lamberg, which is in the province of Mission. This is the year 200 in the Summerforth calendar. 3 years later, Ars has accepted the fact that he is in another world, and he has started reading about the world to know more about it. He finds out that he is in a world that uses magic and other things that are only possible in a video game. Ars narrates how life has been since he got to the new world. His family is well-to-do, and they have lots of servants working for them in the mansion. There are also chefs that are working at the house, and they cook delicious meals. It turns out that Ars has a power that no one else has. One day, he walked into the training room where some soldiers were training. He watches as the soldiers try to best each other. He has a skill known as appraisal, and this allows him to see the status of others. He sees one of the soldiers, Millet, struggling to handle a spear, and when he checks his stats, he realizes that the guy has the potential to use a bow and arrow instead. He walks toward the guy and tells him to try out using arrows instead. Millet doesn't want this because he believes that cowards use bows and arrows so that they can stay away from the front line in a battle. The guy doesn't want to try this, but his comrades urge him to do it, and he decides to pick up a bow. He wants to move closer to the target, but Ars insists that he shoot the target from range. He shoots an arrow, and he surprisingly hits the bullseye. He believes that it is a fluke, and decides to try it over and over again, but the result remains the same. His comrades are impressed with this, and they start teasing him. They tell him never to go near a spear again because he is obviously useless with it. The soldiers then ask Ars how he knew that Malace will be good with a bow. He doesn't know what to say, and he simply tells them that his instincts did, and the soldiers easily believe this. This is the only obvious lie that he can tell them, because they are not going to believe it if he tells them that he is able to read Malace's stats. While having dinner that night, his father, Raven Luvent, asks him if it is true that he discovered Milace's talent for bow and arrows, and he says yes. Ars takes a look at his father using his appraisal eyes, and he is able to see how impressive his father is. He is basically a beast when it comes to swordsmanship, who can easily take out 10 men single-handedly. His father then tells him to work very well on his skills because it is going to mean a lot later on. He is going to become a lord one day, and the ability to know what others can do is going to help him in the long run. Upon hearing this, Ars started studying harder than before. He realizes that he is in a shitty situation because the future ahead of him is very rough. There is uprising everywhere in the Empire, and someday, he might be the one to lead his forces to battle. The idea of him going to war keeps ringing his head, and he wonders if it is even possible for someone like him. However, he wants to keep the people of Lamberg safe because they have been so good to him. In his quest to do this, Ars decides to wear a cape and hoodie to at least protect his identity. He makes his way into the village square to check out the villagers. Even with this, some of the villagers still recognize him from under the disguise. He starts looking around just so he can find the perfect person for him. After looking around for hours, he is already tired, and he sits down to rest. While he is sitting, a woman throws out a guy from her store. The other villagers are also disgusted by the sight of the guy whom they refer to as a Malkan. Malkan is a group of people who came to Summerforth from across the sea, and most of them were brought to Summerforth as slaves. Ars takes pity on the guy and decides to help him. He offers him bread to eat, and this surprises the people. They start to wonder who is helping the Malkan. The Malkan reluctantly takes the bread and he consumes it in no time because he is seriously hungry. Ars then decides to check out the guy's stat. He is shocked when he realizes that the guy is a great figure with no flaws. He can be easily compared to Japan's great figure, Oda Nobunaga. Ars realizes that the Malkan will be a force to reckon with in the future. Once he is done eating, the Malkan stands up to leave, but Ars follows him. The guy turns back and asks Ars why he is following him. Ars then tells him that he needs him to be his retainer because he sees potential in him. The guy asks Ars how he knows this. Ars doesn't know what to say, and he simply tells the guy that he just knows things. He assures the Malkan that he is in good hands and lets him know that he is the son of the village's head by showing him his crest. The guy is convinced by this and would like to consider the offer, but believes that people will never want to stay around someone like him. He starts walking away, but Ars follows him again. Ars knows that he might never meet someone like the guy again, and this is the reason he needs to get him on his side. He tries to get the guy's attention by telling him that he will be served delicious meals at his house if he decides to follow him, and this works. The Malkan follows Ars to the mansion, and this is when he realizes that the guy is not lying about being the child of a lord. Upon getting to the dining table, the chef serves Ars the best food but gives the Malkan a poor one. Ars notices this and decides to take his chair near the guy to prove something to the chef. The chefs are surprised by this, and as they are about to question his decision, Ars scolds them, telling them to treat the guy well because he is his guest. The chefs apologize, and they do as they have been told. While they are eating, Ars asks the guy about his story. The Malkan reveals that he was part of a mercenary group, but lost all of his comrades. He has been alone since then, and has been wandering aimlessly too. Ars asks him why he didn't join another mercenary group, and the guy lets him know that no other group will want to take in someone who has no accomplishments to his name. Moments later, the chef enters the room to ask Ars if he is not going to send the Malkan away. Ars berates the chef, reminding him that the Malkan is his guest. The chef then replies that the Lord will not take what Ars is proposing. Shortly afterward, Ars and the Malkan are seen standing in front of Raven. Ars has explained everything to his father. His father then gives him the reply that he is not expecting. Raven rejects Ars's offer of making the Malkan his retainer. He lets Ars know that Malkans are considered inferior, and he doesn't see how someone like that is going to help the family later in the future. Ars realizes that his father has the same mentality as the rest of the kingdom. He knows that convincing his father will be the way out. He then tells his father to test the Malkan out before writing him off. Raven doesn't want to do this, but when he realizes that his son is not backing off, he decides to give in. He tells Ars that he is going to test the guy, and if he passes the test, he will consider employing him as a soldier. Ars is happy to hear this, and he thanks his father for the opportunity. He knows that the Malkan is going to become great in the future, and knowing his father, he will promote the guy once he sees potential in him. Ars gets scared when he hears the test that his father is talking about. Apparently, Raven wants the guy to engage in a mock battle with him, and if he wins, he has passed the test. Ars lets his father know that the Malkan is just 14 years old, and there is no way he can stand against somebody as strong as Raven. He checks his father's stats to that of the Malkan. He realizes that the Malkan's stats are quite high, but Raven still has some levels over him. Raven then decides to give the guy a handicap just to try and make things balance. Ars asks the guy if he is ready for this, and he says yes. With this, Raven steps out of the room to prepare for the battle, and he tells the two to follow him. The Malkan stops Ars and asks him why he is trying so hard to make someone like himself his retainer. Ars believes that the Malkan is not interested in the job and lets him know that he can tell his father to call off the test, but the guy lets Ars know that this is not what he meant. He tells Ars that he has always been treated like trash, and this is the best offer he has ever received in his life. This is the reason he is surprised as to why Ars wants him so badly. Ars then lets it out that he needs the guy. He says he is going to be the head of the house one day, and he wants the Malkan to be by his side, helping him when this happens. They get to the sparring room and Raven puts on his training outfit. The soldiers standing in the room are surprised to see a Malkan in their midst. Raven then tells Malay to get him an hourglass.
And as soon as this is ready,
Raven tells the Malkan that he will be considered the winner of the battle if he is able to land a blow against him
before the time runs out.
Ars knows that his father is nowhere near the Malkan's level. but he hopes that he can just land a shot to win the match. Before the match begins, Raven demands to know the guy's name, and the Malkin replies that his name is Wright's Muses. The battle begins, and from Raven's first strike, Wrights realizes that he is in trouble. However, the soldiers standing in the room are impressed that Wrights is able to block Raven's attack because none of them has actually been able to do that. As the battle progresses, Raven hits him in the shoulder to get him down. Wrights manages to stand up, and he looks at the time before looking at Ars. He remembers Ars telling him that he needs him by his side, and this is enough motivation for the guy. Wrights charges toward Raven and makes a feint when he is about to reach him. He is able to come at Raven from the back and tries to hit him, but Raven narrowly blocks the attack. Just then, Raven drops his stance, telling Wrights that he has won the match. It turns out that Wrights was able to graze Raven with his last attack, and this only surprises the soldiers even further. Raven agrees to employ the guy as a soldier, and admits that he is someone who will be great in future. He also commends his son for having the best instincts when it comes to judging someone's potential. Later on, Wrights is employed as a soldier, and he looks good in his uniform. He has even agreed to take on servant duties too, and this is because he wants to have a vast experience. He bows to Ars and thanks him for saving him on the streets, and lets Ars know that he will always be indebted to him.